So I've been really interested in youth ratings in Football Manager recently, and we've been doing some experimentation to find out how effective and useful youth ratings actually are in developing good young players in Football Manager, and it's turning into a bit of a mini-series about youth ratings. So in case you aren't aware, every single nation in Football Manager has a youth rating between 1 and 200. With the higher the number, the more likely that country is to develop really good youth players. In your save files, all your best regens most likely come from Brazil, and that's because they have the highest youth rating in Football Manager 2022. Now, this youth rating has always been static in previous editions of the game, but in FM22 it became dynamic, which means it can change over time, and obviously this puts different emphasis on where you can get good players in your save files. But I want to know exactly how important youth rating actually is. So last week we did a video where we set the youth rating to every single country in the world in the game to 1 out of 200 to see 1, how dynamic it was, and 2, how important the youth rating actually is. To make sure we were putting most of our emphasis on the youth rating, I did make sure that every single country was on a level playing field, using the pre-game editor to edit things like economic power and game importance to make sure that's all on the same level playing field. We also made sure that clubs weren't having too much of an impact in it by making sure that the training facilities, youth facilities, junior coaching and youth recruitment were all capped at 10 out of 20 in that rating for the top 1,000 clubs by reputation in the world. And what we saw was pretty interesting, and it suggested that youth rating is not particularly important. For example, Brazil, over 100 years in the experiment that we did, only had a small youth rating. I think it was about 47 or so. Not a great youth rating, but they were always in the top 10 in the world in terms of world rankings. By contrast, a team that was always below 150 in the world rankings was Oman from the Middle East. But we looked at their youth rating and it was above 50. So a bigger youth rating than Brazil, but for some reason they were way behind Brazil in terms of producing good quality players. So this left us with a hypothesis that actually youth rating not that important. What's really important is the population of each country in the game. So today we are running the exact same experiment with one big difference. Rather than having every country set to 1 out of 200 for youth rating, I've set it to 200 out of 200. I've kept all the other parameters in there as well the exact same, so things such as economic factor is set to 20 out of 20. Every country has a very important game importance. And then I've also gone into the top 1,000 clubs again, and I have limited their training, youth facilities, youth recruitment and junior coaching to 10 out of 20 as well. But that can of course grow and is dynamic in the game as clubs invest money into those areas. But it just puts all the clubs on a little bit more of a level playing field, in my opinion, and I think it just makes it a little bit more of an emphasis on the youth rating in the game. And so, by doing this, I've simulated 50 years into the future in today's episode, and there's a few hypotheses and predictions that I want to make. I think because the youth rating hit to 200 out of 200, we are going to see population become suddenly a lot more important. I think countries like China and India, the US or Nigeria and Brazil, big population centres, they're going to be right at the top. In my head, that makes absolute sense because every single country's got the maximum youth rating. So surely the countries with the biggest population have got the biggest pool of people to get those players from. So there's more of a chance that they're going to get great players from their population centres because they're so big. However, I think this could be an interesting dynamic with clubs' reputations because it's not the nation itself that makes the players, it's the clubs that develop the players. And the clubs with the high reputation always get the best players because they can attract the best players in the junior coaching, the youth recruitment to then develop them and then make them that nationality. I suppose if they're getting those players from around the world very young, those players very young will adopt that nationality of the country they're living in, play for that country and do quite well. So places like England, Spain, Germany, the ones that have got the really high reputation clubs, I imagine will still do quite well. So let's dive into this and see what happens. Before we do that though, would massively appreciate a like on today's video. It would help push this video out to other people. Subscribe if you are new around here because apparently 54% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed according to my analytics, and we're very close to 30,000 subscribers now, so that'll be absolutely fantastic. But also do leave a comment down below as well because I would love to know what you guys think and what tweaks you think we can make to have these experiments a bit more reliable in the future as we investigate youth ratings. ratings. Also, if you want the save files for these experiments as well, I have got a link down below. It takes you to a page on Patreon where if you aren't a Patreon subscriber, you can get the save file from 2070. If you are a Patreon member, you get every single save file throughout this entire experiment in the 5-year increments that it auto saves at. Okay then, here we are, 50 years in the future in 2070. Let's have a look at the world rankings first and foremost. World rankings. I think the hypothesis could be coming true. Look who's number one. China, number one in the world, the country with the biggest population in the world, 1.43 billion, and they're right up there at the top. So this is strong evidence that population is really important. Let's see what their youth rating is first and foremost. Let's see their youth rating. It's set to 200, still at 200. Okay, so it makes sense. They're at the top of the world right now. Of course, they're going to be producing the best players. That will always be 200, I'm sure. Now, when FM say that they've got dynamic youth ratings, it obviously means it moves up and down. Obviously, we saw in the last episode that it does go up quite significantly over a long period of time. However, we've never actually asked the question, does it go down? I think I've just taken it for granted that it's dynamic, it means it can go up and down. 50 years into the future, surely some clubs, or nations I should say, have had a youth rating decrease at some point. It would make sense, right? So let's scroll down to the nation in 50th, which is Austria. Let's have a quick look at them. Edit nation details, generated players, 200 out of 200. Okay, let's scroll down to the country in 100th, which is Uganda. Let's have a look. Generated players, 200 out of 200. Okay, I think what we're seeing here is when they say dynamic youth rating, it means youth ratings go up. Because Kuwait in 150th have a youth rating of 200 as well. If we drop down to 200th then, who's that? Libya. Let's have a quick look. 200. So, yes, youth ratings are dynamic, they go up, but based on this, they do not go down. I mean, I don't think it's that game-breaking, but it would be realistic if it does go down as well as up. So that's what we've learned from today's video already. But obviously the title of the video is about youth ratings, so I thought it was just best to check the youth ratings first and foremost before I dive into this rabbit hole that I think I found with population. Now, Brazil has one of the biggest populations in the world, 221 million, so again, it makes sense they're right up there. I'm pretty happy with that. They also have very high reputation clubs as well. Palmeiras, for example, have got a reputation of 9,100, so one of the highest reputation clubs in the world. I guess the Chinese clubs, Guangzhou right at the top here, they've got a population, or a reputation, sorry, of 7,100, which does actually put them, I think, actually in the top 500 clubs in the world in terms of reputation. So they are right up there. Shanghai Port, they have got 6,200. That's probably just in the top 1,000, I would say. Beijing, they have got a reputation of 5,200. That's probably outside the top 1,000. But this does maybe point to what I was saying as well. Population is important, but the individual reputation of clubs is also important. Brazil can make up for the shortfall in population because they have really high reputation clubs who can bring in quality players from around the world, make them Brazilian essentially, and do really well. Now, the population hypothesis might go away a little bit because England is third and they've got a population of 55 million, which is not small. You know, it's one of the biggest in Europe, to be fair. However, this might point towards the battle between population and club's reputation being quite a key area of concern here, because I'm pretty sure that, like, Man City, for example, are going to have a very high 10,000 out of 10,000 reputation, literally the maximum it can be. And let's have a look at the facilities. They have upgraded the facilities all the way back up to 20 out of 20, as you can see. So they are developing great players. They've got the reputation to attract the best players from around and make them English, I suppose. Just for sake of argument, Chelsea have got just under 10,000, and again, facilities, they've not actually touched their facilities, interestingly, whereas Man City have. But again, we're seeing high reputation clubs developing great players because they can attract the best players because they got the highest reputation, and so the national team is pretty good. South Africa, though, are in fourth, and they've got a population of 60 million just about. Kaiser Chiefs, the most reputable club there, and they have a reputation of 6,500, so it puts them just about in the top 1,000 clubs. This is interesting. This is another thing that I've just thought of looking at this. Although South Africa has a population of 60 million, it's, one of the bigger ones in Africa. Countries like Nigeria, for example, 206 million. Countries like Egypt have got 102 million. Zimbabwe, only 14 million. And Ghana have got 31 million. Okay. Now, my geography knowledge of Africa is not superb, but I know that South Africa is obviously in the south. It's the very southern tip of Africa. Egypt, right in the north. Nigeria is kind of on the west of Africa, isn't it? Kind of midway, I suppose, in the middle. And so, South Africa, one of the biggest populations in Africa, probably the biggest in southern Africa, right? But its clubs will certainly have some of the highest reputation. We're not seeing any other southern African nations in this top 30 list right now. So, population important, yes, South Africa's got one of the biggest. Reputation of clubs, yes, because they can attract all the best players from the surrounding countries, not just the surrounding cities, but the surrounding countries as well. And then obviously they make those players South African because they've lived there for so long, etc., etc. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that population is very important, so is reputation. They work in tandem with each other, and I think together they're more important than youth ratings. I think that combination is more important than youth ratings. Now, I could be talking some absolute nonsense here. You could be thinking, Tom, you're an idiot. And let me know in the comment section if you think I am. But I think we're onto something here. I genuinely think we're onto something here, but we need to do more testing. I'm not quite sure how we test this, so let me know in the comment section as well how you think we should test it. But I genuinely think we're seeing that population and reputation are more important. They're linked. And maybe we need to do this over a longer period of time as well to get a solid answer. I feel like a conspiracy theorist. I feel like I should have a tinfoil hat on right now because, I don't make the game. I don't know how it works. I'm just trying to find out how it does work. And maybe I'm on the completely wrong trail here. And there's something going on here and it's just a coincidence that it's lining up with my hypothesis. We need more proof. That's what we need. But I feel like what we're seeing here is that my hypothesis is flowing in the right direction. Like we also suggested as well, Spain have got some of the best clubs in the world. They're going to have really good youth intakes and obviously have a really good national team. Same with Germany. We didn't really mention Portugal though. Maybe that's a bit of an anomaly because the clubs there won't have as high a reputation as Spain, but maybe that's a little chink in the hypothesis. Bulgaria and Peru, I feel, do provide big chinks in the hypothesis that we've got here because Bulgaria have got a very small population and Ludogorets have got a reputation of 6,500. Okay, that's not too bad, but outside of Ludogorets, CSKA Sofia, they've got a reputation of 6,200, actually higher than I thought, to be fair. Sofia have got, if we have a look at their club details, 5,800, so probably in the top 2,000 clubs in the world in terms of reputation. But I do feel like Bulgaria seem to be an anomaly here, which is maybe proving the hypothesis wrong. And then the same with Peru and Colombia to an extent, because we spoke about South Africa taking up all of the talent from around the neighbouring countries because they've got the biggest population and the highest reputation clubs. But Peru and Colombia are very close to Brazil, although they are in different regions, aren't they? In terms of Football Manager, Brazil's in South America South, and Peru and Colombia are in South America North. That really confused me then. So maybe the in-game regions play a big part of this as well. But again, Colombia, population of 50 million, a lot more than I thought, to be fair. But Peru, again, 30 million or so, yet 32 million. The clubs won't be the greatest in terms of reputation, although 6,600 is not far off, well, it is a top 1,000 club there. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit at this stage, and it's maybe contradicting me a little bit, but I think the general trend of what we're seeing here is correct, particularly Argentina being quite a long way behind Brazil, and they're both South America South, but then Uruguay, see, this makes me doubt myself again. And also, if we're going straight off population, India, would be right up there in number 2 as the second biggest country in terms of population. The US is down here actually in 25th, as you can see. That's right up there with 300 or so, 331 million people. So you'd expect them to be higher. Actually, I've just seen India down here in 45th actually, which does feel like a massive step up in terms of world reputation and ranking from the very start. So maybe we just haven't given this long enough. Maybe 50 years isn't long enough to really see the population versus reputation battle happen. But it would also make sense that India's not that quite high up because the reputation of its clubs are very, very low, 4,200. So maybe that does save my hypothesis a little bit. Either way, I feel like I'm rambling, and I feel like the more I talk, the more I'm confusing myself. But I think what we found is interesting. Whilst we're here, let's go through the continental competitions as well. So the African Cup of Nations, who's won it? South Africa. As you would have thought, they're right up there in world rankings. They are dominating Africa. Although Ghana right up there, Ivory Coast as well. That's pretty interesting. What populations of Ghana? 31 million. Ivory Coast, 27 million. Much smaller than Nigeria, who keep coming second and third. But again, that sort of points towards population being very important because they are consistently up there. The Asian Cup then, who is dominating that? Well, China for a long time. But interestingly, Australia have taken it in recent years, as well as South Korea. So China obviously having a big dominating period here. And then Australia, who are 24th in world rankings, 25 million people, are doing pretty well. But I would imagine that they're going to have some high reputation clubs. Although actually Melbourne City, only 5,500. But again, they'll sweep up all of the talent from the Pacific, won't they? So maybe that's part of it. Into Europe, let's have a look at the European Championships then. And 3 lines on the shirt, you love to see it. England winning plenty of European Championships there. But interestingly, Bulgaria won in 2052. France, Italy and Portugal and Spain picking up other ones. Wales runners-up to England one year. Hungary runners-up. Switzerland runners-up. Turkey runners-up. Interesting, Serbia runners-up as well in 2024, so they had a pretty good start to this campaign, didn't they? That's with like the real players still as well, pretty much, because 2024 is probably too short for this to have an impact, so maybe the immediate future is pretty bright for Serbia. Let's also have a look at the Gold Cup as well. Past winners, Mexico and US dominate, but Jamaica do get some wins in there. And a couple of Caribbean nations and Costa Rica coming runners-up a few times as well. So good stuff going on there. Interesting to see, actually, how these Caribbean nations develop, particularly Jamaica, who always seems to do pretty well in all of these kind of experiments that we do. Looking into Oceania then, what's going on in the OFC Nations Cup? We can see that New Zealand dominates, as you'd probably expect in this area, as they do probably in real life as well. Nothing too out of the ordinary or major to look at there. If we have a look at South America, though, let's have a look at the Copa America. And this has been quite mixed. I mean, it's Argentina and Brazil at the most, but Mexico, Colombia and Peru also picking up titles there as well. The big one, though, that is really interesting to me is the World Cup. I want to see who's won the World Cup, and China have got 2 World Cups to their name. South Africa and Bulgaria have also got World Cups to their name. That's really interesting. Portugal, by the way, must be the unluckiest country in the world. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 World Cup runners-up and 1 win. 6 finals, 1 win. That must be a really horrible record to have. Serbia, also 3rd in the World Cup very early on. Latvia 3rd, Ireland 3rd twice. Really interesting stuff in the 3rd place spots, particularly for the Irish people out there. I'm sure you guys are loving that. But we've certainly seen a bigger shake-up here than we did in the previous episode that we did when youth ratings was set to 1. So when youth ratings are set to the maximum and they can't go down, I genuinely feel that population is becoming a really important factor here. So let's wrap this episode up then. I think what we've seen here today is some solid evidence that population is important. Reputation also very important too for the individual clubs. But it's going to take a bit more proving, I think, going into the future. So let me know down below what you think we can do to try and prove this, or disprove it, of course. And whilst you're down there as well, make sure you drop a like on the video for me and subscribe if you are new around here. Until next time, have a lovely evening. Speak to you all soon. Goodbye.